Hello everyone and welcome to SkillCapped. I'm Notorious Dub and today I'm going to be talking about one of the most mechanically talented and craftiest players in the game of Valorant, TenZ. Now, if you've ever watched TenZ play, you've probably had two things go through your mind. The first being, wow, watching him do grid shot makes me dizzy, and the other being, wait, how did he live through that? And this is because TenZ has movement and aiming down to a science, so through this video we're going to be breaking down the biggest things that TenZ does to perfect his aim and make it translate effortlessly into winning gunfights in-game, and the other things that he does to make himself so unpredictable and difficult to kill that if you're not doing, you need to be working into your game as soon as possible. But as always, before we get into the meat of the video, we have to get into our question of the day. And today that question is, who do you think is the best player in Valorant right now? For me, if I can't choose TenZ because I'm already doing a video on him, aceu would be a close second because the guy just knows how to frag. Mechanically, he's insane, and his reaction time seems inhuman, honestly. But he doesn't really play that much, so if we're talking about strict Valorant professionals, I'd probably go for Shazam. This guy can clutch like no one else in the entire game. His comms are always super precise and clean, and he seems to always be in the right spot at the right time. It really just seems like Shazam does all of the little things right, and that attention to detail just makes him stand out to me. But I know a ton of you disagree with me, probably very heavily, which is exactly why I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what your replies are in the comments down below, and I'll see you there. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to TenZ, there's one thing that is so different about his aiming style from most people who are great at the game. And at first glance, it just seems like TenZ is a tapper, tapping the trigger over and over, getting accurate shots off until he hits a headshot. But if you take a closer look at the fights where he doesn't exactly one-tap the person immediately, that's not really what he does. TenZ is the king of pacing his shots, and the reason his firing cadence works so well with the Vandal is actually because of the built-in difference between the Vandal and the Phantom that gives the Vandal that slight edge. And this stat block is called tap efficiency, where the Vandal sits at 6 and the Phantom sits at a 4. Now, I'll save you the extended description. Just remember, it basically means that the higher the tap efficiency rating, the faster you can be with your next shot after firing that first one. And this is why TenZ constantly resorts back to the Vandal, even though he swears that the Phantom is better on paper. The weapon just fits his playstyle better. TenZ's aim battles almost always consist of him swinging a quarter, getting one or two shots off, going for a headshot, repositioning his crosshair while letting his accuracy reset, and then going for another headshot before committing to the spray down. And the Vandal allows TenZ to get to the second round of shots way faster than the Phantom allows, but most people don't even know that this stat block exists, so they say the Phantom is just better. And TenZ also realizes that if you don't hit that first one tap, you might as well reposition your crosshair anyway and go for another, because you'll probably be off if you immediately spray down anyway. And this slightly paced out shot cadence may make him slightly slower on paper. It makes him way more precise than most pros who just resort to the spray down at first step. So overall, his time to kill on average goes way down. And that's exactly why watching TenZ play deathmatch is almost surreal. It seems like he's not even trying to play fast or trying to hit quick shots, because he's not. TenZ puts precision first, and because he's developed this ability so well, he's now lightning fast at getting these accurate shots off, which is honestly what we all should be adapting to. Maybe you're just a god at spray downs, and in that case, stick to it, feel free. But with the randomized spray patterns in Valorant, this paced out shot cadence just seems far superior. Not to mention, you can also get a little bit of movement in while you're repositioning your crosshair, making you that much less likely to get one tapped back. But remember, if you're serious about improving, then go to SkillCapped.com to unlock our hyper improvement system that will teach you how to win more gunfights, master your agent, and so much more. It's also backed by our rank improvement guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. So come join over 500,000 satisfied members of SkillCapped, improve that KDA, and get the rank you've always wanted at SkillCapped.com. Link is in the description below. And then next, this is one thing that I have to talk about because it's one thing I get questions about so often when TenZ comes up. Why is TenZ so good, but he changes mice and sensitivity so often? While in reality, this could be one of the big reasons that he's as great as he is mechanically. Well, not necessarily because he's swapping out his sense and hardware all the time, but because he's changing things around in general. Typically in personal training, athlete development, and training when it comes to any skill in particular, you want to vary your training and constantly introduce new stimulus to force your mind and body to adapt. And whenever you're adapting, you're improving. And in all honesty, this is just the most obvious form of varying stimulus as it gets. But don't take this as a prescription to buy two mice, pick out two different sensitivities, and swap back and forth over and over, because this is just the outcome of TenZ having this constantly evolving personality trait. If you watch TenZ play anything, you'll realize that he's constantly looking for ways to change up what he's doing, whether it's speeding up his shots in grid shot, using a metronome to develop a tempo, or just changing his playstyle in Valorant. TenZ is the king of getting out of his comfort zone when he's playing, and that's the key to improvement. Whenever you're playing, practicing, or aim training, you have to get out of your comfort zone. Instead of of blaming your teammates, constantly look for what you could change about your playstyle. Because even if you make a change for the worst, adapting in general will make you better. Because over time, you'll find a better way, and you'll be better because of it. So take a note out of TenZ's book and get out of your comfort zone. Look for any way to change up what you're doing. And on that note of constantly changing up what you're doing, by watching TenZ play, you'll notice just how often he repositions. If there's ever the opportunity to reposition and not peek the same angle, TenZ will almost always go for the reposition. This likely just comes from an old CSGO mantra that's now dug into his head that everyone used to live by, which simply just states you should never peek the same angle twice. This is because once an angle is used and it's called out to your teammates, and the enemy are expecting that angle, they will visualize you being there, expect you in the spot whenever they peek, and hit the shot way easier and faster than you would expect, even if they weren't the person who peeked you in the first place. So even a small sidestep, moving to the other side of the door, or in this case, snaking all the way around the entire bomb site not once but twice to reposition during a post plant, any movement is enough to be out of where the enemy initially expects you to be sitting, and that forces them to hit a more difficult shot and make a more difficult conscious decision to know where you are or predict where you're going to be. And we also see this repositioning thing with his shot cadence, how he's constantly counter-strafing, changing up his position, and moving around while he's fighting, because you want to force the enemies to have to hit a good shot on you. Put the pressure on the enemies to do something good instead of you having to mess up for them to win. Now I know 50-50 fights are fun and all, but why risk it when you can make the enemy shot just a little more difficult, just by incorporating a little, or sometimes a lot, of movement? And I'm going to be honest here, this is one of those things that you'll probably get worse at before you get better, because repositioning, if you're not doing it now, is all about the flow of the round. The timing, sight lines, and positioning of enemies all have to line up together, and it may take a bit to get the hang of before it all starts to come together, and it may make you die a little bit more in the short term, but whenever it does come together, it will be a huge boon to your playstyle, and you'll be winning rounds that you had no business even being in the first place. And then we have operator angles, and if TenZ isn't peeking an enemy, he's probably holding an operator angle. And don't be confused here, I'm not saying operator angle because he's using an operator. In fact, it's an angle that you would traditionally use when using an operator, because you're only really relying on getting one shot off before you ball back, and this is typically held with a Vandal or some kind of high-powered pistol. Now what you're looking for when picking an operator angle is a long sideline, where you can be pretty close to an angle, and preferably the enemies aren't peeking out at you at a 90-degree angle, so they're moving across the screen at not the fastest rate that they could possibly be. And with this type of angle, you should be able to get off one clean shot at the enemy and get back behind the wall before they're able to stop moving and get a shot off at you, unless they just make an incredible prediction and an incredible shot on you. And TenZ uses these angles religiously for a ton of reasons. The first being that the angle is a very high reward chance for a very low risk. Even though it's pretty hard to hit that one tap, even if you hit it one time out of 10, that's still one free kill that you wouldn't normally get for virtually no risk. The second one being, this type of angle fits his fighting style perfectly. TenZ loves getting the first shot off and then recalibrating for the next shot. And with this type of angle, it's very easy to recognize if the enemy is looking at you or not and varying your playstyle off of that. If the enemy is looking at him, he will typically back off after getting a shot or two off, whether he hits or doesn't. If they aren't looking at him though, TenZ has the presence of mind to get that first shot off, take his time, correct his mouse, and then commit to the spray down just like he always does with virtually no risk. And this really isn't a difficult thing to do, you can probably do this with just a little bit of practice. Which is why these angles are becoming more and more popular among the best players in the game. But they've been TenZ's go-to defending positions for a very long time. And finally, we have abusing enemy information. Now this is one thing that a ton of people are doing wrong, and TenZ pops off and wins so many more rounds than not because of this one trick. Now on defense, it usually comes down to abusing smokes for TenZ. TenZ loves to go for the early pick, dip behind the smoke, and reposition using the smoke as cover, often camping inside the smoke if he has nowhere else to go. This is because the enemy is afraid of where he originally peeked from, forcing them to constantly hold that angle, so when magically he's in your face out of nowhere, you're caught off guard, picked off, and he's back into the void before anyone can trade him out because they're worried about that first spot. So on defense, this strat is as simple as realizing where the enemy thinks you're going to be playing, or they know that you're going to be playing because they already saw you there, and then getting to an area where instead of you being in that spot, you can kill them whenever they check for you in that area. But on attacker side, it's actually much easier and much more effective. Most people aren't holding operator angles, and they sit passively on site if they aren't fighting for control. And this is where defaults work best. Contrary to popular belief, you shouldn't default because the enemies are on a save round or you think that they're going to push out of somewhere aggressively. This is the reason why so many people are defaulting wrong. Whenever you're playing a default, spread the map and prod for information, making sure that you can't be flanked and everything's covered. And if you notice that an enemy isn't peeking a specific area of the map that's pretty important, important, like C-Long on Haven, that just means that if you're able to sneak up on that area with your team, then that one guy that's on site is called out with his rotators a full map's distance away from him because he isn't getting any early information to let them know to rotate. And this is why defaults work so well, and what we constantly see TenZ abuse on attacker's side. When the enemy isn't checking you in an area whenever you're defaulting, tell your team to walk over, reposition to you, silently walk up until you make contact with an enemy, and at the moment that you make contact, you immediately explode onto the bomb site. Enjoy your free plant because they were playing too safe. But remember, if you want to improve, win more gunfights, and get the rank you have always wanted, then check out SkillCapped.com. Link is in the description below. But these are just some of the biggest things that make TenZ one of the best mechanical players in the game, and the craftiest as well. But what do you think about TenZ? And if you're a fan like me, what do you think puts him up there with the best? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn those notification bells on, because we here at SkillCapped have a ton more comprehensive premium guides coming your way that you're going to want to stay up to date with so you can stay ahead of the pack. As always, I want to thank you for spending this little bit of your day with us, and I'm Notorious Dub, signing off.